In the dense forests of the Himalayan foothills, a legend emerged in the late 19th century that would forever engrave the name Champawat Tiger into history. The Champawat Tiger, a name that still sends shivers down the spines of those familiar with her horrifying legacy, that roamed the forest of the Himalayan region in northern India and the western part of Nepal during the early 20th century. The name Champawat Tiger has become synonymous with one of the deadliest man-eating animals in history, responsible for the deaths of 436 people over a 7-year period. Join us today as we delve into the story of the Champawat Tiger, the circumstances that led to her reign of terror, the attempts to stop her, and her eventual demise. However, before we jump in, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring that notification bell. The story of the Champawat Tiger begins in the late 19th century. It is important to note that tigers rarely prey on humans, and man-eating behavior is often a result of extenuating circumstances, such as injury or scarcity of natural prey. There is also the belief that if tigers do taste human flesh, they can develop a deadly craving for it. In the case of the Champawat tiger, it is believed that the tiger's initial attacks on humans were likely triggered by injury or dental problems that made it difficult for the animal to hunt her natural prey. The tigress was initially known to haunt the region of Champawat, a town in the Kumaon district of Uttarakhand, India. At first, her attacks were sporadic and isolated, going unnoticed. When she claimed her first human victim, it was seen as a rare and isolated event. In an era when the forest was dense and human habitation was little to none, occasional reports of wild animals' deadly attacks on nearby villages were not new. However, as her attacks on humans became more frequent, they escalated into a reign of terror. As she continued her man-eating spree, she ventured into the neighboring areas of the Kumaon region, spreading fear among the local population. The Champawat tiger's reign of terror was marked by a staggering death toll. The tigress seemed to develop a taste for human flesh, and the attacks became increasingly brazen. She would often enter villages and homes to claim her victims, striking fear and panic among the local communities. The villagers lived in constant fear as their livelihoods and lives hung in the balance due to this deadly predator, and as the death toll continued to rise, panic spread, leading to the collapse of local villages. The death toll steadily mounted as the Champawat tiger's hunger for human prey persisted. Her attacks were gruesome, often leaving victims mutilated and terrified. The local authorities and residents were left desperate for a solution to this deadly problem. The situation was so bad that the Nepali army was called to eliminate the tigress. This was the only logical solution at the time, considering the army personnel were primarily from the hill regions with lots of knowledge about the forests and their inhabitants. Despite their expertise, each attempt to kill the tigress failed because she kept escaping even the most skilled hunters. The army successfully managed to lure her towards the Shada River with the help of the villagers. This river flows along the border of India and Nepal, but the tigress crossed the river and entered Indian territory and continued to wreak havoc on another location. Once the tigress had set up in the Kumaon Hills, she resumed her killing spree, roaming multiple villages with Champawat as her central point. She used a different strategy this time, making kills at a distance, which was different from the way she killed at her previous locations. This made it challenging for people to track her movements. She was clearly adapting, and she was much more cunning and intelligent than any other tiger they had ever seen. The tigress primarily targeted women and children, as they were easier to overpower. And unlike leopards and other tigers, she carried out most of her attacks during daylight, showing absolutely no fear towards humans after having claimed so many lives. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, the British colonial administration dispatched several skilled hunters to put an end to the tigress's rampage. Enter Jim Corbett, who would later gain recognition as one of history's most accomplished man-eater hunters. However, in 1907, he was a young and inexperienced hunter, faced with one of the most savage man-eaters in history. Remarkably, Corbett was quick to request the removal of the bounty on the tiger's head, setting him apart from many of his fellow hunters. Rather than viewing the tiger as a deranged monster, he saw her as a desperate animal fighting for survival. While recognizing the need to stop her, he was resolute in his determination not to do so for financial gain. For 4 days, he journeyed through the scorching Pali jungles until he reached the village of Pali, where he discovered a small town in disarray, devoid of any signs of life. Observing subtle movements within the huts, he settled in the town square, kindling a fire and patiently awaiting the villagers' emergence. Before long, pale-faced, terror-stricken locals cautiously emerged from their homes. They recounted their 4-day ordeal, during which they had barricaded themselves indoors to evade a menacing tiger. This fierce predator had patrolled the road connecting Pali and Champawat for an entire week, her thunderous roars sounding through the night, a chilling sign of impending danger. However, the villagers had refused to venture out, and now their food supplies had dwindled to a critical low. Recognizing the gravity of their situation, Corbett promptly sprang into action. He enlisted the assistance of a villager and made his way to the ravine where a young girl had recently been killed by the Champawat tiger. There, they uncovered the distinctive pug marks, the telltale tracks of the tiger, and swiftly realized that they were dealing with an elderly, past her prime female tiger. All that remained of the girl were a few scattered bone fragments, which they carried back to the village for a proper cremation. Another incident led Corbett to the neighboring village of Champawat, where terrified witnesses recounted the horrifying tale of the tiger carrying a woman into the trees, gripping her by the small of her back. The woman had still been alive, crying out for help, but the villagers' own fears had kept them from pursuing the beast. Corbett collected as much information as possible about the tigress, but he needed a solid lead, a fresh sighting. While talking to the village leader, Corbett received alarming news. The Champawat tigress had struck again. He immediately headed into the jungle, determined to find and stop her. Tracking her through dense vegetation, he reached a rocky area in a gorge. He could hear the tiger's movements and saw her from a distance. She began stalking him, causing a mix of fear and adrenaline within him. With little chance of a successful shot, he retreated as night fell, returning to the village to devise a new plan. He resolved to pursue the tigress within her own territory, fully aware of the inherent dangers and disadvantages. To level the playing field, he decided on a strategy to drive her into an area where he could obtain a clear shot. The following morning, he organized the villagers, positioning them atop a hill opposite another hill. At the base of the hill lay a broad ravine. Corbett instructed the villagers to, upon his signal, create a cacophony of noise, intending to flush the tigress out of hiding and force her into the open. The villagers, caught up in their excitement, had positioned themselves too far from his target location. As the villagers started making an incredible amount of noise, Corbett had to sprint across rough terrain, risking a fall. On the other side of the ravine, the noise from the guns, clanging pots, and loud screams grew louder. He reached the ground and hid in the tall grass, desperately hoping he hadn't missed her. All he could hear was the noise and confusion, and his heart sank. Then he spotted her, an older yet majestic tigress moving through the underbrush. Without hesitation, Corbett aimed and fired. Corbett's initial shot missed, but he managed to hit with the second and third shots. However, these shots didn't prove fatal, leaving the tigress in severe pain and consumed by rage. The tigress began to charge at Corbett. He fired one more bullet, this time finishing the job. Corbett approached the tigress and knelt beside her. Upon a more thorough examination of the tigress's remains, it was evident that she had lost her upper and lower canine teeth on the right side, likely due to a prior gunshot. This likely contributed to her transformation into a man-eater. The story of the Champawat tiger is a tragic yet significant chapter in the annals of wildlife history. It serves as a stark reminder of the challenges that arise when the boundaries between human civilization and the natural world intersect. The Champawat tiger's reign of terror, its hunt, and eventual demise at the hands of Jim Corbett are emblematic of the complex relationship between humans and wildlife.